All right. Well, good morning and happy Wednesday. And what a great Wednesday we've got today. We have, of course, Chris Brown with us, who we're going to discuss a little bit about Monday and the White House and how that went with the rally there. And as you see, we got a special guest today, Shane Hazel.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, everybody. Chris, Sam, Nate. Nice to meet you guys. Really, it's cool to cross paths with everybody else that's in this fight, man. It's awesome.
Absolutely. And those who haven't heard yet, he is running underneath the Libertarian Party here in Georgia for governor. Huge advocate for what we're trying to do with cannabis and the plant, as you mentioned, and you're correct on. So we are absolutely thrilled to have you on this show today.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys for giving me a platform. There's not a lot of people out there in mainstream that want to do anything like that. Obviously, they're all about power, and we're all about empowering people to their rights and, just living in a more peaceful, easy to get along society. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like I'm 42 now, and I remember growing up like, hey, man, you just leave people alone that are peaceful, right? Like, you might not like what they're doing, just mind your own damn business is kind of like what my grandfather used to say. And boy, God, it seems like we've just gotten so far away from that. So to be able to, go out there and hit the establishment in the chops about, hey, kids, listen, you guys, just because you're older doesn't mean you should be going out there and hurting people and taking their stuff, especially with badges and guns, man. It's just, it's a crazy, weird world. I mean, it seems like simple stuff, right? It's just like, you tell your kids this kind of stuff and they're like, yeah, got it, man. And then somewhere along the line, they're like, we're going to hurt people and take people's stuff. You're like, I don't know who you are, man. Your parents didn't raise you right. That's for damn sure.
Right. Well, first of all, let's start here. Chris, how was your week? Of course, you had an eventful one Monday.
Man, I've had a totally eventful weekend. Some planned, some unplanned. Got a chance to attend a group of Black councilmen from around Georgia. Had a nice inaugural meet and greet. So get a chance to sit down and chop it up at the local level. So, we're celebrating the 5-year anniversary of BCRIM in Atlanta. And so, we're still working. We're going to work it all the way to the top. So we've seen that great news come down from the president, and, we broke down last week kind of my breakdown on what that meant in terms of the phases. I think that we're on path. We're going to do what we're supposed to do here in Georgia, which is making sure that we empower these municipalities. Now that the federal government is weighed in, you empower these municipalities. And so, working on some ordinances and some resolutions for these local municipalities to jump in. Of course, Monday, the party was down at the White House, and so they had a few hundred people out there. Good turnout. The movement has to get bigger. We're now organizing. We're trying to roll out 5 states to jump on board since they've announced this piece in terms of this cannabis. In terms of the party. We ready to go, man. Like I'm just saying, I'm excited. Glad to see Shane's here. It's just about empowering people's voices and amplifying these voices. On common sense things that we all can agree with. Some things just don't make sense. If it don't make sense, it just don't make sense. It's just that simple. You can't change the narrative for something that we know even the solution to. Mm-hmm. So now it's just about taking those solutions and saying, hey, we've tried all those different types of ways. We don't really agree with what you got going on. So let's try it our way. We got a contract going on. You're trying to get in office. Some people trying to get in office. And if you don't, some people that will.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things actually I wanted to ask you is I saw an article that just came out on Monday saying that Biden would not pardon cannabis sales. So he will pardon those, as we saw, under a percentage of, but not those who are selling. And the question I have for, of course, both of you, I understand that they're probably trying to focus that on the black market, but the truth is, when does that cross over into what we have in storefronts, brick and mortar, and could it?
Yeah, go ahead, Chris. Yeah, the pardoning part of people who are in jail or in prison because of cannabis and nonviolent crime. As an executive in Georgia, the easiest way to go about this, especially at the governor level, is like we have a board. Like there's 5 guys that sit on it under the Georgia Constitution. You appoint, 5 people there that are extremely, pro freedom, pro rights, pro cannabis, whatever. And at that point, you just say, hey, man, start going through everything. If anybody and everybody wants to appeal, they're in prison, they're in jail, whatever it is, we're going to release these people like right now, like yesterday. And hey, we're sorry that the government before, us and the executive was a bunch of crackheads, and they wanted to do some really shady stuff with people in terms of locking them up. But hey, you're free to go. That's got to be the path. You can't be selling and making money through corporations and all that kind of stuff. Well, people who are in jail for an ounce of weed or more, you're just like, man, no, this is absolutely on its head.
Yeah, so we're pulling numbers. We want to see the numbers, and so one thing that I think that the initial piece did was to empower the local organizers and activists who's been doing this criminal justice reform, who's been into this prison reform piece. Again, we have to be the voices for the people that's on the inside. They have the power, they still have rights too, and so it's just us being able to band together and advocate. One thing that's going to be hard. I don't know if it's going to be a blanket approach. But one thing I do know is if we help pre-screen cases and we know the charges and we helping the people appeal and walking through and just having common sense legislation again and a governor that understands and that cares. We can ask that question now. There are 3 people that's running for governor. This is where we stand with it. Somebody in January will be in a great position to do something. What's the plan?
Well, not just to both of your point, but beyond that, not only, like you said, Shane, let them out yesterday, expunge those records. We don't want them to have an issue where they can't get a job or they can't provide, not just for their family, a mortgage. Who knows what? There's so many other ramifications that follow underneath more than just saying, okay, let's let them out.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. Is this trickle down. I hate the term. It's just this trickle down idea that we're going to break up communities because of a plant, right? Like, I don't know about you guys, but the first time I came from this really, really conservative path, right? Like growing up, like I went to Brookwood High School out in Snellville, and they were pro, like war on drugs. There were the DARE programs and all that other nonsense. I think I was 21 before I actually got a hold of some cannabis in college, and when I tried it, I was like, what are they talking about? This idea, this understanding through actual use, that you're just like, the first time you like your mind just goes boom, right, and explodes, and now you've got all these questions. And so to see how the state on its perverse incentives and communication incentives, and we can get into some deeper stuff here, this is all driven by bad banks, like a fiat banking cabal, this communications protocol where we interact through a fiat currency, right? This fiat currency that loses money every day. These people that created this are also the people that want to destroy families, because family units, this is what insulates us, that helps us when we have kids or we're taking care of our parents and all of these things. If they can use a tool that pries us apart and puts us in prison, or removes a very strong father figure, or those people that supply that that understanding of communion, even with certain understandings of cannabis and psilocybin, if you remove those very strong people through force and coercion for nonviolent crime, what you're talking about now is putting the state in as a wedge to fill the gap of the father, of the grandfathers, of these people that are going to help lead their communities. And that's exactly what they want to do. They want to be the solution, so that when they give you money, they're saying, here, man, this money comes with a carrot. You're going to do X, Y, and Z, right? They're going to incentivize through fiat currency the destruction of the family. And that is exactly where, we, in this fight for, a plant, basically, or even psilocybin, you're looking at a reversal of that degradation, that decay, that infection of the state into our lives and into our communities.
Shane, I got a
Yeah,
question for you. I got a question for you, and you hit on a point that's very interesting when you're talking about dividing the family. When it comes to the decision maker, the governor, the person who can push bills through that either benefit communities or divide them. How do they go about deciding how the dollars are appropriated and how we're taxed?
Oh, great question. So I don't think this is there's another piece to the executive that I don't think a lot of people really talk about anymore, right? We the executive, we hear about executive orders all the time, but the executive is one branch of a three-part government. When they wrote the Constitution in Article 4 of the Constitution, they ensured that all state governments had to be quote unquote, Republican informed, not the party, but the way they are structured. So you had, a legislative branch, you had an executive branch, and you had a judicial branch. And each one of those is supposed to be a check and balance on the other. So when we're looking at the executive, the person who literally puts people out on the street with badges and uniforms and guns and says, you're going to follow what these people in the legislature say and what the judicial backs up, you still have that option as the executive to go, nope, you know what, man, this violates this right, that violates the Constitution, whatever. It violates these things. This is bad law. And as the executive, I have not only the power, but now the responsibility to sit there and say, no, we're not doing this. And so now, as a leader, as an executive who understands that you get to push back and say, these laws are not only unconstitutional, but they're just immoral laws. Some people in the executive will say, there's the letter of the law and then there's the spirit of the law. No, there's also morality of law. If you're violating peaceful people and their right to use nature as medicine, as building materials, as industry, whatever it is, then you have that power and that responsibility now as the executive to push back. So when we're talking about dividing this up or pushing legislation or signing legislation, like, it's so much easier than that. What we have is the power of nullification, to sit there and say this is going to be decentralized down to the local area. So whether it's the sheriff, whether it's a mayor, now we start to understand that, listen, we're going to empower those people at those levels where people can actually reach out and touch those executives. And those executives, if they're not going to come around and nullify all cannabis laws, all psilocybin laws, the war on drugs, civil asset forfeiture, the qualified immunity, cash bail. Like, if they're not going to be those guys, you can get rid of those guys really, really simply. And that's the power of the executive, is more so nullification and decentralization of bad law that's on the books now.
So I think one of the things that I get from that is very key to have the right representation, not only for just a community, but for all people. It's really tough to get everybody on the same page in beliefs and outlooks. So it sounds more like that executive that's in place, if his belief falls into those taboos in the community that you say that you grow up in, with the dare programs and so forth, that basically pushes the wrong narrative. It continue to perpetuate it out to the people in the wrong way, and then now they double down on it, and then now they use
But
law
let's.
enforcement and legislature to put people in prison and incarcerate them.
I'm curious to know, like, I mean, because we talking like he's not running for governor right now. So I'm curious just to know, what I mean, first 100 days, understanding the power that you have. What does that look like? Talking about that narrative that we just discussed, very specific. Like, what does that look like to be to
Yeah.
the to the to the lay person who, because that'll bypass some of the people that we're talking, some of our audience,
Yeah.
Uh,
Um, so you have you can pull up the website radicalpod.com, pull up the Helios tab, and I'll show you what this looks like. When we look at what day one for me looks like as the executive going in, it's this. As the number one executive, the highest ranking executive in the state of Georgia, I am gathering everybody from the state troopers, all the alphabet soups. I'm gathering every sheriff. I'm gathering every mayor. And this is my message to each and every one of them. The war on drugs is over. Qualified immunity is over. Cash bail is over. All of these things are my expectations because these violate the law. Now, if you pull up that and show people when we kind of break this down, is my direction to everybody is you are going to be safer as quote unquote law enforcement if you stop doing these things. Your budget for incarcerating people and putting people behind bars, now you have more expendable income to actually go after really hardened criminals. We're done with policing of peaceful people. And what we're going to do is show them the legislation that they can adopt at the local level through executive order, which we've already done in Holly Springs. We already have an example of this. I came up with this last year, and if I don't know if you have it on the background there where you can pull up the web page. Do you have that? Radicalpod.com.
I can pull it up from here.
Yeah, pull that up because there's already, like, I've already done the work. I've already put together everything that we need to do for these people to nullify at their local level through the sheriffs and through the mayors. The understanding that day one, this is it. And now I'm going to tell you, you should be going through your jails and you should be going through your prisons and finding the non-violent offenders and releasing them. That's day one. This is my message to every executive in Georgia, anybody who wears a badge. And here's the other thing is, feds, you're gone. I don't need your help here in Georgia. I don't need you ATF. I don't need you DEA. I don't need you FBI. I don't need any of you guys. What I need is the people in the small towns of Georgia to get in touch with their executives and start doing things. This is so super simple. This is what, any leader who's concerned about their citizenry would do. They just sit there and say, hey, listen, now we're going to open up industry. Now we're going to have money pour into Georgia because the farmers grow whatever the hell you want, right? We're going to leave farmers alone. If they want to be in the hemp industry, great. If they don't want to be in the hemp industry, I don't care. But in terms of nullification, if you arrest people, I'm going to pardon them. As the governor, I've got a board of pardons that's 5 people that I install, and if you arrest them for anything that is a nonviolent crime, I'm going to pardon them. So you're going to waste your time, effort, and resources, and you're also going to put yourself at risk, because the other thing that I'm going to tell the rest of Georgia is you have a right to cannabis. If anybody tries to take your property, cannabis, or your land, whatever it is, you have the right to use deadly force to defend yourself. And this is under U.S. Code 242 or 18242, deprivation of rights under color of law. It is a federal crime, a no kidding felony, to deprive people of their rights under law in Georgia and every other state. So that's my message day one. This is what we're going to start to do in terms of precedent.
Now, one question I had real quick is, and I see this as one of the things that's stopping a movement across the nation. We talked about a couple of weeks ago. In 2021, 43% of all drug-related arrests were because of cannabis and marijuana. That's a lot of revenue just to face the dollar signs.
Yeah.
How are we going to get that mentality to change to where we find that it's a beneficial way for the economy locally at the state level, and we're not worried about it in judicial in terms of that revenue of that 43%? I feel like a lot of that's got to change the narrative too.
You guys see this? You guys know what you guys familiar with Bitcoin?
Yes.
All right. So let's talk about incentive right now in the economy, right? And this is one thing that I love, and I am damn near autistic on the economy, right? The US dollar is failing. It is going to fail. What we're seeing over in the UK right now with the new prime minister, who's talking about bringing in a central bank digital currency. This is happening in real time. Understand that a central bank digital currency, no matter where it is, no matter who's implementing it, is a centralized, manipulated form of currency that they will use to continue to dangle carrots in terms of federal money in front of police officers, in front of mayors, in front of legislators, in front of the judicial branch. And that CBDC comes with a social credit score. If you are a threat to the state, your social credit score is going to be in the tank. It'll come back in a second. When I say they can control everything that you can do everything that you can buy, anywhere that you can travel, anything that you can do in terms of business. That is what the CBDC is for. It's been used in CCP China for I don't know how many years now, and it has absolutely decimated them. And there's uprising in China over the CCP bank, right? The yuan over there now. This is going to be installed in the UK. They're going to try it here in the US. Jerome Powell's already started talking about it. They've got white papers and everything else that they are looking at how they're going to roll this out and flip the switch. So when I talk about centralized currency, understand that there is, these centralized banking cabals around the world. And those are the guys that really run the show. It's not, corporations, it's not government, it's the banks. And so when we see how the bank structure is about to really, really go super tyrannical, and they don't want you using mind altering amazing drugs like cannabis because you start to see the cracks in the foundation, or psilocybin, which really opens up the torrent in floodgates. That's where they're going to go. They're going to go for complete lockdown on these kind of things. Now, Bitcoin, on the other hand, not crypto, nothing else that's centralized, nothing else that's manipulated. A decentralized currency that is saleable over time, space, scales, and has proof of work, not proof of stake, is how we can communicate with each other. It fixes the communication protocol. Whereas a CBDC is a force and coercion type of protocol, Bitcoin is a peace and consent protocol for human beings. It's an interface. It's the base layer. It's like TCP/IP for the internet in terms of computers communicating with each other. Bitcoin is a base layer technology that fixes the communication protocol from me to you versus, me to you to a bank. The banking cabal gets shut out. You become your own bank. And now how do we make this work in Georgia? You just, as the executive, you open up the market to different currencies. You basically decriminalize the use of Bitcoin. You decriminalize the use of gold. You decriminalize whatever people want to do in terms of trade and barter. And when we start to look at the mathematical equation where, because money doesn't wait and it moves into extremely hard assets, Bitcoin is harder than gold, right? Like it is a deflationary digital scarcity that nobody can reproduce and nobody can shut down. So when, as an executive, I see, the trade of things like cannabis or guns that the government doesn't want you to have, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, now we have a way around that they can't stop. And that's the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is like, hey, you go do whatever you want. You can trade with whoever you want. You can fix this really broken ass communications protocol that we have with each other that's based on force and coercion. And now we can start to reprogram people and infect them with a really pure, consentful, peaceful type of interaction, which is another communication protocol.
Shane, I got a question for you. In regards to rerouting the funding and creating a support system, how would you go about doing that?
Rerouting funding from the state and creating a support system?
Yes, because if you create the decrim from, I guess, less legislation and less government, then the way how they tax the people by imposing fines, taxing the people more for incarcerating people with the crimes that they charge them with removing that, would you create more support programs? How would you reroute the money and get the funding to give support programs to help people even more?
So here's the narrative once the money changes, right? When we start using Bitcoin or Lightning, it's a layer on top of it, versus a fiat currency. What you do now is you remove the incentive to force and coercion. So when I say you remove that incentive by the state, what the state can't do is take your Bitcoin. If you have your Bitcoin on your cold wallet and you hold the keys to it, you're your own bank, and they can't take that. They can't take any of it. And so now what we're talking about is removing the power of the state to collect tax. And if they can't collect tax, then you have all the ability to use your time and your resources on what you deem is necessary. So now, if you expand this, right, you've got people who are probably going to be hired, right? Like we're talking about privatization of police forces. We're talking about privatization of EMSs. We're talking about privatization of mental health issues. And this is the big piece for psilocybin and cannabis, right? Is now, instead of taking money through force and coercion from people that maybe don't agree with us in terms of psilocybin and cannabis, now we have the ability to take that extra money that we would have given to these guys who would waste it on things that violate our conscience, and we can stand up programs locally that will start to improve those mental health problems that we have in Georgia and around the world, right? Is like, if you can start to flood the market with cannabis, you can start to flood the market with psilocybin. Now what you're doing is you're creating a private market solution through peace and consent that's actually going to address the problem of mental health. And that's different from saying, hey, guys over there that, vote Republican and don't quite get this kind of stuff yet. I know you don't understand cannabis. I know you don't understand psilocybin. They're coming a long way. I think they're at like 70% now that would legalize it. Is now, you guys, we're not going to take this through force and coercion from you. Maybe you don't believe in our programs. This is something that's revolutionary in terms of the way we think now. Government is never the solution, because at the end of the day, whenever government does anything, it has to take through force and coercion to do whatever it is that they want to do. And that's the problem with the CBDCs and the fiat currency. And I'm telling you, probably by summer of next year, this is going to change in America. And most people don't understand that.
So the average person would probably blow it away. The interest of cannabis is probably keep them glued to the show. But how do we break it down to them? Like, what I mean? And we also understand that, of course, we're moving forward. And part of, we know that also kind of needs to happen is people coming together. Some people are going to push back. It's not going to be just a walk in the park. You know what I mean? There's going to be those that push back. There's going to be those that come down. With that happening, how do we look at facilitating with all that's happening? With you in office, and it's going to be pushback. How do we walk through that? Because I know we need to also bring people together. The racial traumas and things that's going on here in America, and especially here in Georgia, we've seen some progress in some areas, but we definitely know that it still exists. It's alive and thriving, and it definitely affects the Black and brown community. How do we address that? Because there could be an all-out heightened war on drugs in those areas. The lack of education to some of the things that you talked about, lack of accessibility, and then those mayors and other localized bodies would then start to enact. I don't think that everybody would take it in willingly. Just through the feel of it. So how do we get there? Like,
yeah,
so this buy-in.
Yeah. How do we get there? So to introduce you guys to this community that I'm a part of, right? Like, not only am I a libertarian, but I'm a Bitcoiner, and to introduce people to this community is something really, really special, right? Because, people can talk about, Democrats, they can talk about Republicans, hell, they can even talk about libertarians. But when you look at the Bitcoin community is this community that is laser focused, that comes from a whole bunch of different backgrounds. It doesn't matter, what your race is, color, creed, who you worship, who you love. None of that kind of stuff matters to these people. They have one mission and one mission only, because they know it's the most important mission on earth, and that is freedom through exchange. So if they understand that when it comes down to a CBDC versus a Bitcoin, this community, whether they come from a tech background, whether they come from a cultural background, political background, industrial background, whatever it is, these guys are all coalesced now into a laser beam, and they're this big, giant, amazing family that's like, you want to learn something? Come here, let me teach you, let me show you. This is like, it's free education for anybody that wants to first and foremost learn the basics of economics and the two different schools, Keynesian versus Austrian. And this stuff isn't hard. Like, guys, I'm a like I came out of the Marine Corps Special Operations. I should be eating crayons. But when I, went out and started to try to find this kind of stuff, it was so like, they were like, here, read this, listen to this, let me help you if you want to go this way or that way. So is it going to be like a light switch? No, it's not. You're going to have some mayors, you're going to have some sheriffs that want to work with the federal government through CBDCs because they're going to sit there and be like, hey, you know what? I can get more value and do more of this kind of stuff because they're going to give me more CBDCs to go out there and violate people's rights. Now, the ones that actually get it and they see the future, this is an instant sell, right? Like to make them more safe, to make them a better part of their community. We're going to start chipping away at these things, but the problem is this is never going to be done for anybody. This requires people to get involved. Like in 2016, I didn't do anything. Like I was not politically involved. I was not taking steps. I did not have the right education to start fixing this. But now it's like, it's all there. It's on one sheet of paper, and there's an entire community that's going to back you up in terms of helping you learn and educate and then pass on this education to other people. So when everybody gets wiped out, and I'm telling you, like the stock market, the foreign exchanges, the cryptocurrencies, all that kind of stuff is going to get wiped out in the very, very near future. And there's going to be things like gold, there's going to be things like silver, there's going to be Bitcoin, and then there will be CBDCs. And when we see how this transpires and being this far ahead of it is like, well, guys, you can either choose this peace and freedom, or you can choose the CBDC, which is, more theft, more coercion from your local level. And I think that's where this thing really gets shifted into high gear, because now this economic piece, this is the piece that unites everybody, because you guys are being robbed just like I'm being robbed right now. When we see inflation, which is just a giant uptick in the amount of money that's in circulation. I think it's been 8 trillion in the past like 2 years that they've said, we're going to just breathe it into existence from the Federal Reserve. Didn't matter if it was Trump, didn't matter if it was Biden, doesn't matter if it's Democrats or Republicans, and it never will. This piece here says, listen, we can fix all this and we don't need those idiots, right? We can all come together, we can unify, and we can teach each other and trade with each other without all this. So is it perfect? No. But the thing is like, there's no rulers here. There's nobody that can manipulate the code. And when we have that, when we can sit here and now say, listen, in our community, we are going to do these things. This is power. This is something that you could, literally you could take down to your sheriffs, take down to your mayors today and start having these conversations and figure out who they are. I mean, I'm doing it here in Forsyth County as one guy, or I'm sorry, in Cherokee County as one guy, and having success. If there's a group of people who are organized to do this, man, it's a wrap. It's done.
Well, one of the things to your point there, Shane, if you've heard about this in DC, for example, where the jurisdiction has legalized cannabis, they do not allow the purchase or sale of it. So it's legal to have it, but you can't exchange it for money. The entrepreneurial spirit is there, and the businesses have sprung up offering goods and services to the public. So, for example, you buy A, we give you this. But it's a great example of what you're saying of you're allowing this to happen and you're saying it's legal, but I can't purchase it from you. So how am I going to make all that check and balance work out when you're creating loopholes? You're tying our hands.
Yeah, that's the beautiful piece about localization, right? Localization and freedom and currency that they cannot stop. If you do the two of those together, what are they going to do? They're going to send in the feds. They don't have enough people to do that. That's why they rely now on local law enforcement and fiat currency, right? Like if these guys do drug busts, if these guys take property through civil asset forfeiture, they get more money, right? And if that doesn't occur, if they can't take your money and they can't take your stuff, and you can have peaceful transactions that they can't stop, what are they going to do? That's the beautiful thing about the decentralization piece of Bitcoin, where when at the end of the day they think we're going to regulate the stuff. Can't regulate Bitcoin. It's just this FUD, this understanding, this this misinformation, disinformation about what's going on in this world, and that's why it's such a threat. this is the real threat. All of us coming together, all of us talking, seeing how we can communicate and decentralize this government together, because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about.
Right, because like for example, in New York, they've actually had to put on hold those who are trying to get a license right now because the state office, they've closed their period, but they had over 900 businesses applying for licenses for cannabis in the state alone.
It's silly. Yeah, you need a piece of paper to grow a plant. I mean, when you say it out loud and you call them to the carpet on this and you say, really, I need approval from people that don't understand this, who have outlawed it, who have both criminalized people and hold a patent on this thing. I need a license from you guys, who I think most of the population considers to be murderers and thieves and liars. Like, we don't need that. We don't need them. It's silly.
So we know that the industry is less than 2% minority in terms of the industry. How do we address? How do we start to address those issues in those communities that has historically been affected by systemic things of this nature? How do we make up for that? Because that's a large percentage over a long time. And just to add, I heard something around 52% of Georgians are reading at 8th grade proficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, really?
So how do we start to address that?
You want to do education first, or you want to do empowerment in an industry?
I'm just saying the plan. So I'm just trying to take what I'm trying to learn is learning from a person definitely that's running to be governor.
Yeah.
That has, created a platform, definitely very well knowledgeable about a lot of things that definitely make a lot of sense, right? And so I'm trying to figure out how do we take it and to be able to take it to all these different communities that are isolated, and that are further behind in certain areas. How do we try to figure out how can we all, because that's what I say, it takes coming together, but I got to figure out how to get it to the people. Like, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but we know that there's some things that can happen. So there's some things happening that we can push forward, and there's going to be some things that's going to be created to happen. Just a 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, and let's address it this way too, right? Like, most people who don't have a ton of money, right, have all been affected over time, right? And so let's start with education, because I think this is one piece that is a giant problem that is a much more easy solution for everybody. Government youth indoctrination. All right. Government youth indoctrination is not what people are familiar with in terms of public school. Public school just sounds like, oh yeah, you know what, we're doing a good thing by educating everybody. Well, not really. Public education system in America came from Prussia. It came from Prussia in the 1700s. And what they did was they put together the system that would try to homogenize and create solidarity under a government, so that when when the government needed an industry to do something, or when they needed culture to do something, whether it was, I don't know, put up a new factory or go to war with some other innocent people somewhere, they had a citizenry that was indoctrinated enough to say, yeah, let's go do those kind of things. Okay. There was a guy named John Taylor Gatto, and I hope anybody and everybody in this audience will read him. He was a 30-year veteran of the New York school system, and he got Teacher of the Year while giving these guys the middle finger, saying, this system is absolutely the most, invasive, corruptive system for a child's mind that you could possibly have, right? So what we've got to do is we've got to get kids out of being indoctrinated by the state, by the government, because when we have those guys tell us what we have to do with our children, how to educate them, what they should be educated on, what they should be reading, what we do is we lose our culture, right? We lose this idea of like who we are as people, what is really important. And they, obviously manipulate, us through, the understanding of economics, the understanding of medicine, the understanding of damn near everything that we do. So getting government out of education and privatizing education is one of the first steps in terms of healing communities, whether they are, brown, black, white, mostly just indoctrinated by the state to begin with, whether they can read at a college PhD level or an 8th grade level, maybe doesn't make a damn bit of difference if they're all focused on going the same path towards the state, if that makes sense. So that's one of the first pieces that we've got to fix. Does Bitcoin fix this? Absolutely, because it takes away their ability to take property from people to pay for the state system. And that's what I was talking about during the debate is property tax is, especially for people that, want to, privatize or homeschool, do any of those kind of things outside of the norm. You're taking away, funding from what they can do on their own. Now, how do you make that up? Well, there is a natural course in what we're doing, right? Like if we're starting to rebuild culture, rebuild family, rebuild community because we're having peaceful, consentful transactions. Now, what you get is this flood because people want to be industrious, people want to work, and people want to let their passion show. So if we can foster passion and show people, hey man, education is actually kind of free these days, right? If you want to learn something, after learning, basic math, basic reading, now you can go out into the internet and learn damn near anything. Or you can be, taken on as an apprentice in your local system where, if you want to go out and learn plumbing, you want to go out and learn agriculture, you want to learn, whatever it is, this is super simple stuff and it's not expensive. It's super like it's just go out and learn, find your passion and put a lot of work into it. This is the decentralized approach to things like education. And then the cultural side, once that comes around and we start to heal that and fix that and build families again and build communities where peaceful people are left alone, that's where you start to see industry come in because what you have to first have is a stable economy, right? You can't have this fluctuation in economy. You've got to have stable families and communities that insulate each other against outside forces. And then you've got to have, the stability of things like energy. If we've got energy that's, moving left, right, up and down and because of, how it's pegged to a dollar, or when Saudi Arabia and places like that no longer take the dollar because it's nonsense, then what you're going to create is a stable energy for those people to tap into that's cost effective and low at the same time. It's all done by Bitcoin, by the way. And so when we see this in terms of, helping people become more equal, helping people understand, what they can do at their local level or where they need to go because maybe their locality doesn't support what they want to do with their genius and their passion in life. This is something that, opens up dramatically when the state isn't involved and the state isn't forcing things down our throats or stepping in the place of a family.
So we're in a state of emergency. What is our message to our state superintendent, our labor commissioners, our agriculture commissioners? What is our message? Like we know that the executive is the executive, but he can't do it alone. Is one. How do we engage the people that are also elected officials again to do this without having to shake a system that's already broken?
Yeah, that's the thing is we're talking about revolution, not reformation, right? And I think most people would agree if you take a step back, this whole system is broken beyond repair. What it's going to take is absolute revolution at the local level. Can we do this together? Of course we can. We've got more communication than we've ever had. We've got the ability to do, communication, like I said, through peace and consent. It's now your message to the commissioners, to the superintendents, you've failed. You've absolutely failed. Is the message that I have for them? You have failed the people, and now my, I guess objective is to make sure that they don't have to pay you. I don't need these people to pay you to continue to fail.
You're going to have some newly elected people. Not all people are going to be incumbents in those positions. You're going to have some new spirits, some fresh blood, and so therefore all would be given the same opportunity just as you would. And so, what about the ones that's coming in as fresh? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and to your point is they're coming in fresh to a system that's built on fiat, that's built on force and coercion. That can't stand. That's the biggest piece, right? Is when you have a system that's built on force and coercion, that's going to fail.
Some people can't spell fiat. And so therefore, better yet, even understanding what fiat means, and that's why I
Yeah.
say we have to come to, like, I get it, right? We could disturb more than what we to fix something more than and be in more dismay in the outcome over a period of time. And because that's the only thing I see. It's like it's a lot of confusion now. Like there's some things that have to be stabilized now for us to advance any type of system, or any type of openness. We have to slow that bleeding down. We know that
Well,
whether you stay in rural Georgia or if you stay in Atlanta, there's those effects. How do we engage federal dollars? How do we engage some of the systems that's in place already? How do we address
I,
these things?
I guess my question is in saying how do we address federal dollars, right? Is do you do you want a corrupt system, a corrupt money?
I'm saying it exists today. It's not going to change tomorrow. So therefore, what I'm looking for, like I'm always great for the end goal. I'm also looking like give me my 1, 2, 3, and so
Yeah.
that way, again, if we're gonna talk about empowerment on a revolution of any type of any sort, and it's just thought leaders coming together to figure out how we utilize the system and what autonomy that we have, and people may even buy into it because look at cannabis over the years,
Yeah.
the approval rate, that's why we're here on the show because cannabis has came a long way,
Yeah.
and we're here and we've seen some things in America that we thought that we never see.
Yeah. So let's. I mean, and this is good, right? Because in these meetings, right, where let's say I'm an executive and you're a community leader, right? This when we're going through this transition, because this transition is coming right now, like it is upon us. I think everybody sees that the US empire is melting down in real time. Most of the banks are melting down in real time. So when we figure this out together, right, we have some base rules, right? We get down to some real basics, like my community and your community, we're better off not hurting each other. We're better off at peace. Would you agree?
Of course.
Right. Yeah. So I think, when we say, all right, let's be very peaceful with each other while this thing rolls out. Is that what the message is from the people in the government? It's not. The thing is those people are still coming to you, pointing a gun at you, saying, "Give us your stuff." Even if you don't agree with it morally or consciously, as this thing is melting down and changing, they're still those people that are saying, give us your stuff, or if you hold out long enough, we'll use enough force to kill you in front of your family, even maybe. So we have to be that change. We have to be those people that bring them in and say, hey, listen, we can coexist and you can coexist over there, but what we're going to do is we're going to empower individuals first to their rights and to their property and to the rights to property. So my community and your community, now we can sit there and say, okay, now how do we do this together? How do we trade? How do we take everybody's skill sets within this community for survival, growing food, clothing each other, providing energy for each other, providing communication for each other? How do we best do this? Because those guys over there have some ideas, but they're coming at us through force and coercion. And you and I, we've already agreed that peace is the only way to do this successfully. Because if we harm each other's communities, what we're going to do is create war. That creates destruction. And destruction and war doesn't determine who's right and wrong. It only determines who's left at the end of the day, right? So if we can sit here and decide, hey, listen, our communities would be best served by not taking dollars from the federal government. Our communities would be best served by not having to, take all these strings that come attached from these guys who want to manipulate us, who would very much like to see us divided. And that's the Democrats and Republicans. I don't want to say, it's not the libertarians. Like there's still some infighting there, but for the people in our sphere, this economic sphere, this Bitcoin sphere, to say, hey, listen, I think we got this thing wrapped. I think we figured out peace and consent. We can have these transactions all day long and we can do it peacefully. And if that's the goal during a transition, then what we have is a foundation and a new communication protocol, and we can sit there and start to push back together on those people that are pointing guns at people with badges. If that what question? Like that's a basic premise of like how we're going to transition from where we are now to where we're going.
No, absolutely. And something I want to touch on, Shane, kind of switching a little bit, but not necessarily, because we're definitely going to get on a lot of it on the cannabis here. But, you know, you talk about peace. People want peace, not just in their own lives. They want it mentally. They want it in so many different ways. And we've seen what's happened to people's mental health over the last couple of years. Dramatic, huge. COVID definitely hurt us. We focused last month on this show about suicide awareness. It's a major factor in society, whether it be any race, creed, doesn't matter, your religion. It's a local thing. It's a national thing. It's all over. Alcoholism is huge. Tobacco, huge. Those are legal products. And most people, they don't want to talk about this, but consumption of alcohol is to cover pain. It's to cover feelings, emotion. We got a plant, like you said, it's a plant that can help with all of this.
Yeah.
You know, it's important because they were talking about how the age group that experienced the most death via alcohol were those 55 to 64-year-olds. And I think a lot of times we would think that would be teenagers, early 20s. No, it's a much higher. 2,200 Georgians died from alcohol in 2020. The highest number in 22 years. When we've, like you said, got a plant that we can help with this. Suicide rates, 13.7% is where Georgia is nationally right now. And one of the questions I have, and I don't think any of us really know for sure, that's the ones that we know were. What about what they consider secondhand suicide? Somebody who caused an accident or something. Suicide is a huge thing. And I think this cannabis could help with that because people need pain relief. They need mental relief. You know, for example, story broke the other day. Tristan Nash, son of Kevin Nash, pro wrestler who he's had a lot of alcohol issues himself too. He's a partier. Met him a couple times. Great guy though. His son, they both tried to quit cold turkey. It caused cardiac arrest and seizures, and that caused Tristan's death.
Wow.
This is a gentleman who he just lost one of his best friends a few months ago from alcohol and drug-related incidents throughout his life.
Yeah. Two
major things. I don't know if you've met this person or not, and I might say her name wrong. Von Schur Reiten, the coordinator of addictive disease here at Georgia, behavioral.
Okay.
She was talking about a lot of these different things. She's talked about how we got all these new programs here in Georgia and whatnot. And also Erin Campbell, who is the director of Summit Wellness. She talked about how she started at age 15. She would drink 25 to 30 beers a day, not including mixed liquors. So we've got all of these different things. And in a report literally that just came out, 7% of people polled say that marijuana is more dangerous than alcohol. 54% say that the alcohol is more, and 38% say that tobacco is more dangerous. Then when you relate the tobacco industry there, 13% say that marijuana is more, 45% tobacco, and the 38% is equal. But here's the thing that, to your point earlier, like you're talking about, 2/3, 68% support legalization in this country. Supposedly by these numbers, 76% of that is Democrat, 73 is independent, 52 is Republican. But now let's look at the age real quick. 18 to 34%, or 18 to 34 age range, 87% of those people support legalization. 35 to 54 is 70%, and 55 and up is 53%. The numbers show the Americans want it. We're being held back, as you said. And to that point of those numbers, are we being held back from what currently we have of our leadership, or is it us not being proactive enough? And what can we do to be more proactive to change that?
Well, let's just say it's both, right? Like if we take more action and we know what we're doing and we have the right tools and we're talking to the right people, we'll have better production out of individuals and humans, and in terms of your community and local levels. At the state level, at the Fed level, of course, they are holding you back. Why? Industries. Because when you mix the government and you mix corporations in a fascist society like we have now, what do? they use lobbyists to write laws so that they get rich. So you have the pharmaceutical industry, who is absolutely one of the biggest. I think it outspends every other industry by like 3. So when you look at that, you look at the alcohol industry, the tobacco industry, you look at all these industries that have cornered their market, so to speak, and they say this is and should be legal, and we'll also allow you to tax it, and you got to put up barriers for entry so that other people can't come in here and compete with us. Yeah, you're being absolutely held back by all of those. And I'll tell you, as a Marine with post-traumatic stress, I didn't even know I had post-traumatic stress, guys. To see what cannabis and psilocybin do for the relief of being either a drunk or an alcoholic. I can tell you right now, man, like I stopped, really, like I was drinking a ton when I was a Marine, like even afterwards, just drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking. I didn't even think I had a problem, right? The problem was is I didn't know exactly how bad it was. I had no idea what it was doing to me. I had no idea that there were better things out there. And I had no idea that it was probably covering up something internally that was wrong. And at the time I was like, I don't have PTSD. I got, I'm fine, like look at me operate. I'm very high function and everything else. Then cannabis came along. Then psilocybin came along. And all of those things with alcohol, I was like, oh God, what a poison. And I'm not saying, a drink isn't fine here and there. Like I'm not saying that. But at the same time, you start to compare these things and they are absolutely different in terms of what they do. You have an endocannabinoid system, for God's sakes.
Mhm.
You have a system that is extremely psychedelic reactive in terms of psilocybin as well. And so when we look at these things that you can grow out of the earth for damn near free and apply them to your life, yeah, they're scared to death that you're going to crush their income if you legalize cannabis and psilocybin and drugs, because psilocybin might even take you off of everything else, right? It's one of those things where you're like, well, man, I really don't need any of that kind of stuff. I'm good. I've seen what is out there. I know what the experience is. I am going to, I'm going to be more um, intentional with my life now because I've been given an instruction. So, yeah, this is something that you're being held back by your own action, by the state, and everybody else out there. When we have all sorts of just, you know, not only bona fide research, but geez, it doesn't take somebody with a PhD to go, what, this is actually a really great substance for human beings. It's a far less, intrusive or addictive or damaging substance than things like alcohol or, big tobacco or pharmaceuticals, for God's sakes. I mean, look at what pharmaceuticals have done in this country. It's crazy. So yeah, no, this is all the result of a perverse incentive system that is fiat currency, unfortunately.
Well, and that's what I wanted to ask you about your take on big pharma. Because, for example, if you hadn't heard the story, the individual who is the heiress to Publix, Carol Barnett, she gave $800,000 in July to drug-free Florida to fight the legalization of cannabis in Florida. I would say not because she doesn't want to see it legal, because that hurts her pocket. And Publix, I don't know the exact number, but they're making what? I think it's 58% of all of their sales come from their pharmacy.
Wow. I wonder how much come from
money to fight that.
Yeah, I wonder how much come from their beer and alcohol aisles, I mean, and that's you're looking like you're going to severely impact the sales of pharmaceuticals, you're going to severely impact the sales of tobacco, you're going to severely impact the sales of all their alcohol. And I mean, those things, that's exactly why these people get in bed with politicians. It's gross. And you take that power away from them through using a currency that's not theirs, man, let's go.
So there's a bill in Congress, the Medical Marijuana Research Act.
Mm-hmm.
It's already passed the House. So currently sits in the Senate. Georgia, as an emerging market, has the opportunity. Well, we already have 2 educational institutions, Fort Valley and UGA. They currently has exemptions to grow cannabis and cannabis research and cultivation.
Mm-hmm.
How would you utilize just the current state to connect those institutions to providing cannabis and cannabis education? Would you be in support? If there's a plan that already exists, and I've been talking to a lot of people. There's a plan that exists. I want to get your take on connecting research and development, just for this current system. We know that other pieces are going to flip over and things are going to start to change. But right now, there's some immediate things that can happen that can unlock things that can provide immediate relief and immediate access for Georgians. Would that be something that you would be in support of?
Yeah, I mean, and this is the beautiful piece about, I don't know if you guys are into jujitsu, but like jujitsu is one of those things where you kind of use your opponent's strength and force and all that kind of stuff against them, right? So when you look at the state, man, it's got a ton of force. It's got a ton of coercion and everything else. What you can do is use their own policy, their own code against them. And you start looking at equality, right? Well, why should University of Georgia and one other institution have a monopoly on the research? Shouldn't we, if this is something that we're looking into, wouldn't we want more and more people looking into this? So you start to expand this through equality. You just say, hey, listen, Kennesaw State, North Georgia, the rest of you guys out there with ag programs, we think that you guys should be equal to Georgia or UGA. Let's make sure that this happens. And then after that, I think you're kind of just to the point where, I guess if you're playing within the current system, you try to equalize it across the board, right?
That's the opportunity. So the bills see it and read things, right?
Yeah.
Then it creates other things to happen.
Yeah.
And so with medical research, like you said, that it allows for Kennesaw State, it allows for other institutions to partner with other institutions to provide research. And would you, given that current scenario, would you support that? Like, we got less than 2 weeks to the election.
Sure.
Somebody's going to be the governor.
Any and every step you can take, right? It's in all of the above. Like, let's move. Whatever we can do in terms of moving in a direction that gives somebody else that, like, oh, I'm not going to be persecuted by the state if I go do this. Like, yeah, let's go. Like, take whatever step you can, incrementally or big chunks at a time. Like, it's not like, that's the thing that people, come to me a lot of times. They're like, well, you should be doing, you should be doing this with your platform. You should be doing this with your audience. You should be doing that. Well, hey man, go show me how to do it. Go show me your platform. I'm not saying don't do it your way. I'm saying do it every way you think you can. And that's the all of the above approach, right? It's like, listen, there's not one way to do this. And that's the beautiful thing. Now, I will even say on top of that is I will point everybody to research and development on cannabis to the places that have done this, like Colorado, California, the Northwest, places like Canada have knocked it out of the park, right? So when you look at, you've freed a market, you've freed an industry, they're going to pour themselves into this so that they can be the best product or service to their end user possible. Because if they have more end users, they have people with deeper pockets, they have a broader audience, they are the authority on these kind of things. What's going to happen? They're going to make more money.
And we might even find, that advancements of cancer, that's the initiative of the president currently. I think that with doing this and being inclusive, not even to not talk about COVID, we know COVID and cannabis, the research that's shown with the University of Oregon, it's booster time to boost up. Could I boost up with cannabis? I think the research shows that I could, and
it'd be safer.
So, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's messaging out here. We have to use our platforms and say, people have to know the options. It's a lot of education that has to be done. I think that sometimes when we amplify those opportunities, people, that makes sense. Just common sense. It said that for real. And you just point people, look, it's right there. Don't believe me. Read it. It's right. It's authentic. It's not us coming to sell anything. It's us saying this is what was reported to us.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, we spend about, I don't know how much time, but everybody looks at these, like damn near everybody looks at these, right? And who's bringing content to these? It's not the government's not doing a great job about it. Like, they're not the ones that are going like, oh man, I need to send the CDC report over to my pals, right? No, I need guys that are creating good content, that's fun content, that's accessible content, that makes like, a 30-second pitch and goes boom, and it just, nuclear explosion. That's the kind of stuff that I need. And that doesn't come from, this organized, religion of the state. It comes from people that are acting in their own interests to either grow their audience or to provide knowledge. And at that point, what you're looking at is people who are trying to go through their own faculties and resources and things like that to add value and create content to what we do on a daily basis, right? Like, that's the race now, is how do I provide the best content to people? And now, if this comes along in terms of your education piece is going to handle itself, because people now have a market to sit there and go, I can be the authority on this. I can put my own, twist on this. I can do all of these things, and I can share them with not only my people, but you can share them with your people. You can share them in these communities. This is what's worked. This is best practices. And that's what happens, right? Like, that's what I was trying to say during the debate, is like, our abilities as humans to adapt, that's our superpower. Your ability to adapt to a changing time, which we are in now, that's your superpower. But that doesn't work if you are told what you can and can't do and held down by the state. Like, when they limit your ability to trade, to react, to do whatever you need to do during emergency situations, that's a terrible idea. You got to trust people that they're going to do the best thing that they can do for them and their community during those type of times. And that's why, like I said, it all kind of round circle now is CBDC or Bitcoin. Which one is going to help us be as adaptive as possible during changing times? And it's not CBDCs.
Well, the overall education, like you were talking about, is highly important, because we discuss so much about, yes, recreational as well as medicinal with this plant, but we don't touch enough on all the other benefits, from hempcrete to the fact that we've actually seen them make artificial limbs out of it.
Yeah.
The possibilities are endless, I think.
Yeah. I think that's a great piece that, regardless, there should be a conversation to some of these groups and things I've been working with and coming in contact with, not just here in Georgia, but across the country. We got some states that are doing some great things. New York doing some great things. We're wanting to, again, as it relates to cannabis, bringing the thought leaders. Again, there's people that's running for office, and there's people that's sitting in office. A great idea is not because I said so, but if everybody's saying great idea, I think that we should be trying to put that on, on the forefront, especially if you want me to cast my vote.
Yeah.
And even after the fact, it's not one of those things where we're bitter forever. We work as a party, we do our thing, right? We elect the candidates that we want to choose and put in there. I think there's opportunity where people are dissatisfied even with their own parties this day and age. So it's a lot going on. So I think that, again, this is the time that we have thought leaders to come together to do innovative thinking, things that's going to help move localized economies forward, things that's going to help push those things that are most meaningful to those localized economy, and that's meaningful to those families, but we also want to make sure we keep up with the people who voices are muffled because all the people are laying on top of them, with their great ideas. So I look forward to all the great work that you're going to continue to do and the things that you're going to continue to say. You caught a lot of great attention during the debate, and so I think that we came here because it's like, man, give him some time to talk. He wanted to talk, so he wanted to hear a lot. I definitely was interested in what she had to say as it relates to cannabis, and I agree on a lot of it. I definitely want to build, to develop the ABC 1, 2, 3, no matter what happens. And I'm talking about some things. The president's coming here, and he's made some promises. I think that if you look at the medical marijuana research act, you'll see some of the same things that the president alluded to in his statement, about what he wanted to do. I do think, because I think the instructions to senior staff and senior people in administration is going to trigger some things. I do. That's the part I'm looking forward to. until the activists keep fighting. But I'm looking forward to what's coming down, and I'm seeing the companion pieces in legislation that can go through now. Like we're asking all our senators, you know what I mean? If you want the people to vote, the vote of the people, especially if you're in cannabis, we want to push this bill before they break up. Anything can be broke up. You know what I mean? We don't have a 50-50 tie. You know what I mean? This could be a deciding factor. It could be one of those things like, hey,
yeah,
right
let's
here.
go. That's it too, right? And that's what I would challenge anybody who's in this space, right? Is, are you willing to go teach this to anybody and everybody that'll come listen? All right. And that's my offer to you guys. If you have a group of people, if you got communities, like groups of people that I can come and be like, hey, let me give you a quick education on cannabis. Let me give you a quick education on decentralization with your sheriff and your mayors. Let me show you how this works. I can do it, man, probably about in an hour for each one of those type of things. And it's like, man, this is what I'm doing. If you look, I am that guy, right? Look, you see here what we're doing. Like, I am out in the middle of nowhere in North Georgia. So what we're doing is we're taking guys out and doing things that they don't want us doing. And they can't stop it because these guys are vets. They're PTSD people. They are people that are in Bitcoin. We are about to set the world on fire, and we're practicing what we're preaching, right? We're showing them there is absolutely nothing but peace and healing and medicine and industry and everything else that comes from this. And we don't need you guys at all. We're going to show you guys how to do this peacefully. So if that's something that I can offer to anybody out there that wants to go this way, man, I'm telling you, this is, we got 2 weeks left for an election. After 2 weeks, and I get to do this full time, when I get to go teach cannabis, psilocybin, Bitcoin, how this all works together, and we start to really heal our communities and then bring our communities together instead of dividing them. Oh man, I got such a passion and love for what we're about to do. I mean, that's my offer to you guys. So if now, then, whenever you guys have that opportunity to say, yeah, hey man, come down here, be our guest, take questions, teach, and really set people up for success going forward during this time of transition, so that they have foresight into what's about to happen. Oh man, what a humbling experience.
Oh, absolutely. We'd love to not only just have you back on this show, but for other things that we're going to do as well. And unfortunately, I guess we kind of reached that time frame for the day. But man, it was an absolute pleasure on having you here. First of all, what we'd like to do is we'd love for you to take a moment to tell people where they can connect with you, where they can follow what you're doing right now, not just in the governor race, but in the cannabis field as well.
Yeah. So you can follow me at radicalpod.com. There's links for everything. I run my own podcast. It's called Radical, and we are on a mission. This is the thing is if you guys need it, you guys want it, this is our mission, is to free everybody, to empower the people in their localities with their sheriffs and when their mayors, to peacefully decentralize, to start nullifying whether it's state or federal or local codes, things like that. This is our chance, and we have it all written out. Like, it is like the game plan's there. All I need people to do is look at it, take action, and get smart on it as fast as possible, so that when the dollar and the empire comes unglued and just goes into its final death spiral here in the next couple quarters, that we're prepared. And what we're doing as community leaders is calling for peace in a time of transition. So that's thank you guys for the platform. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the amazing questions. And thanks for fighting for this kind of stuff, man, because a lot of people, they want somebody else to do it for them. And the people that are taking action, those are the people that are going to make it happen. So thank you guys. Hats off. And really, this is awesome experience.
Absolutely. Thank you. Chris, tell them what you've got going, where they can connect with you, and hopefully can keep moving this forward like you did on Monday.
Definitely. You can follow me at CB #4 ATL, the CB4 ATL on all social media platforms. Definitely check us out at gacannabisreform.org and try to keep up what's going on here in the state of Georgia. It's a lot going on. We'll start dropping some federal stuff as well. As you see, we're making the connection since the president's been able to do to initiate some conversations. Tune in and tap in.
Absolutely. And we've got all of these news available on our Twitter page, as well as the Matcha Foundation page on Facebook. We put multiple stories up a day, whether it be Georgia or nationally, what's involved with cannabis and mental health. I've got a site later I'm going to set up on our page for people. If you need help, reach out for it. There are many ways, mental health wise, that you can get it, not just here in Georgia, nationally. It's important. Reach out to someone, ask for that help. That's why it's there. Hope you guys all have a blessed week. We look forward to seeing you again next week. And again, thank you, Shane, so much for coming on today and joining us. And we hope to have you again real soon.
All right.